Hello and welcome to Furious Driving, and today I'm at the wheel of the car that replaced the Elan Plus 2. Yes, I am driving a 1979 Lotus Elite, at the time the most expensive four-cylinder car on the market. This car is an astonishing 32,000 miles survivor, and it's actually for sale at Percival Motors in London and Kent. If you're interested, hit their website. Otherwise, please go and hit like, and absolutely please hit subscribe. We're so close to 100,000 subscribers, it hurts. Let's make that happen. Hit the button, you know you want to. And now a quick word from our sponsors and on with the review.
Furious Driving, proud to be supported by Diamond Bright, protecting, cleaning and caring for the Furious fleet and for yours, with 10% off using code FD10. Follow the links in the description below. So this, as you are no doubt aware, was the most expensive four-cylinder car in the world at the time of launch. This is the Type 75 Lotus Elite, although from 1980 it was known as the Type 83. Because reasons. Not to be confused at all with the Type 14 Lotus Elite, which came a few years previously and was a little two-seater coupe and very cute indeed. This though was a shooting brake, or as we now call them, a sports hatch estate. And this one is particularly special because it's only got 3 owners from new, it's completely original, and it's only got 32,000 miles on the clock. So as you look around this car, it's hard to believe this is, I hate to use the phrase time warp, but really it's a time warp car. There are the odd little mark here and there, but everything on it is completely original, as screwed together by Lotus. The little pinstripes here on the wing, the trim, everything. It is precisely as it left the factory, which is almost unheard of today. So head down to Percival Motors if you're interested in buying a small slice of time warp. But anyway, let's look back at the story of the Type 75. Now, in the early 70s, Lotus had a slight problem. Everyone knew Lotus as racing cars, Formula 1 cars, very successful performance cars and sports cars, but they had a bit of a reputation as, well, kit cars and enthusiast cars. It was the wrong kind of image for making lots of money. What they wanted was to go up market and compete with the likes of Lamborghini and Porsche and that kind of thing, become a bona fide proper supercar. So what they needed was a very posh, quite expensive car, a halo image thing, and that's where this came in. And it does have that whole incredible 1970s shark-nosed wedge look. It looks like a Miura grew up and became 1970s-ified almost, with this low, sharp front end, this protruding 70s safety bumper. And the thing is incredibly low. I mean, seriously, it's incredible how low it is, but also how wide the thing is as well. You stand around the back of it, it's a different time zone from one side to the other. The exterior was all designed in-house, and it does look very Lotus. You can see the family resemblance to other Lotuses of the 70s, the Esprit for example, and it has all the best 1970s into the 80s little accoutrements. For example, we've got pop-up headlights. How cool is that? I mean, that's just an automatic win for anything. And of course there are a number of parts bin items being a Lotus. We won't mention which particular BL product the door handles came from, for example. But this car really is pure 1970s extravagance perfection. Look at the stainless trim around the windows and across the top of the roof. This is just artwork, and the sheen in it and the satin finish is like new, and it is just perfect. Huge non-opening quarter light, because getting inside there we've got air conditioning, and that's because, you see this badge here? 504. That means it's the posh one. There's only a couple of trim levels in this, all 50 something, and the 504 was the one that got all the toys. And below that, with this sort of semi-aerodynamic, breaking up the airflow, little crenellation shape just here, which goes on to make it look just so 1970s perfect. And these are some of the best alloys I think I've ever seen. Now, like the Reliant Scimitar Sports Hatch Estate we recently featured, this is not a full estate car rear end, so technically I guess it is kind of a shooting brake in a way. However, there's nothing on the outside of the car in order to open it. You have got a rear wiper, which is magnificent. You've got, in the most 70s font I've ever seen, push here to close, or press here to close, and there's two little screw nubbins here, so you press on that and you know not to shove the glass and break it. But getting into the thing is a little tricky because there's no keyhole, there's no button, there's no anything. You have to go inside the car for that. Now you're probably going to be looking for the opening thing on the dashboard or beside the front seat, or more logically, if you're Lotus, here beside the rear seat, so you can barely reach it, and you need to ask your rear seat passenger to open the boot for you, because Lotus. But at least it does open itself for you, so that's a little luxury touch just there. Then once you're inside the boot, what is surprising is that it's actually not a hatchback or a estate car, this is actually a separate boot with a second layer of glass inside, so you can see out the back of the car, and separates the passenger compartment from the luggage compartment. So it's, although it looks like a shooting brake estate car, it really isn't. Who knew? Hidden surprises and secrets. It is very nicely appointed though. Your luggage will be enjoying this very soft and tactile carpet here in the back. And one quick one-upmanship over the Reliant, we have got a rear washer on this car, which the Scimitar was lacking. So if we pop the front hinged bonnet, we'll find Lotus's 2-litre 4-cylinder twin cam engine, which is a masterpiece in itself. And here with the engine, we'll notice a couple of other interesting things, notably just how pristine this car is. So 32,000 miles from new, the car is barely broken in and it's been garaged its entire life. So it's like eat your dinner off here. We've got the curiousest little metal pipes for the windscreen washers here, living in this little scuttle area. So this is Lotus's Type 907 aluminium block 4-cylinder twin cam. It's a double overhead cam, 16 valve, and it's got twin Delauto carbs sitting on top. You can hear the fuel sucking through there, even at idle. It's a delicious thing to be around. It was actually the engine that was the basis of the motor that went into the Esprit Turbo. Now before we get in, let's mention the 504 badge, because there were basically 4 trim levels. 501 was the absolute base. The 502 added air conditioning to the base model, so a little bit more luxury. Bear in mind, 1970s, in the British or European car, air conditioning was actually very, very luxurious indeed. Moving up to the 503, that got air conditioning and power steering, but then the 504, the big daddy of them all, got air conditioning, power steering, and then ruined it all with a Borg-Warner Type 35 automatic gearbox, which makes it very easy to drive, let's put it that way. But climbing aboard, pull the part spin door handle, which actually fits very neatly inside that door, it has to be said, and I'm just staggered by the condition of these little gold pinstripes and this multi-layer swage line with the rubber and the satin. Oh, it's just lovely. This car is just so very, very original. It's like I'm stepping into the early 1980s here, and the smell that hits you when you open the door, it is pure 1970s. You know, it's incredible. You get the vinyl, you get the carpet. Oh, slightly sharp, slightly sweet. Oh, it's amazing. I'm going to put out a bit of paper matting so I can see the carpet properly in here for you. First of all, the door. The door does not open very wide at all, it has to be said, but it is heavily padded. Soft touch vinyl across the top. We've got an ashtray in the door, believe it or not. We've got electric mirrors for left and right sides of the car, not just the Mercedes trick of only giving you the far side as electric and the nearer one as manual. We've got more part spin door handles and this little curious metal tray which is actually your grab handle to pull the door shut. But then below this soft touch vinyl across the top, we've also got soft touch vinyl in the centre. Vertical detailing stitched into there to make it look interesting, also padded, and we've got an armrest built into the door as well, into the shape of it, and it's just padded absolutely everywhere. Climbing inside the car, where you've got thick, soft black carpet which looks stunning, and we've got these gorgeous leather bucket seats complete with headrests and seat belts. 1970s safety becoming a real thing. We've got a nice wooden knob on the end of the seat handle, which is pretty cool indeed. And moving forward, check out this tea tray and dashboard area. It is covered in beautiful Flock Alcantara. It's absolutely stunning. I'm going to put a ban on using this as a tea shelf for anything at all. I want no foodstuffs whatsoever coming in contact with this. It'll ruin it. I'm not happy with that. But one thing you do find on the un-tea shelfable tea shelf is this rear view mirror, which is not, you'll notice, mounted to the top of the windscreen in its traditional position. It's down here in a very old school 1920s and 30s position on top of the dashboard, which gives you a slightly curious view out the rear of the car. Anyway, this is all very, very square indeed. This is an Ital Design collaboration creating this interior. They were trying to make this car appeal to a more lucrative market and a more well-heeled buyer with higher levels of expectation and sophistication. So as well as this Alcantara across literally everything, it does feel stunningly nice. And it's actually a checker pattern. You don't notice it at first, it's a checker pattern. Stitched or pressed into the left hand side. We've got a wood or Formica wood faced glove box which is also Alcantara lined with cup holders. We do have a tea shelf for 4 cups. It is a 4-seater, so we have 4 cups. There's a lot of thought and planning going into this car. Moving back into the centre, we have got more of this Formica stuff, which a Ford Granada 2.8 would have been proud of. A curious mixture of knobs and dials. So we've got a pair of little pull-out knobs for our lamps and our panel dimming, I think it is, and then 6 of these enormous chunky switches which look like they may have come from Jaguar actually. We've got the electric windows because we are in a expensive posh car, so as well as aircon we have got electric windows. We've got rear wipe and rear wash on separate chunky switches, rear diffuser, which is the wrist screen heater, and the hazard lights all here surrounding the clock. Then we've got our heating and ventilation. We've got a very stiffly rotating dial just here. We have our sliders for destination and temperature in the middle, and to the right, actually matching the design of the others, making a nice square symmetry, we've got our lighter, which actually does match these other controls quite neatly and fits in very snugly. But then we've got a pair of vents which are matched, although those are horizontal, these are vertical, on this 45-degree slope on the corners of the dashboard. So we've got great ventilation around the car, big vents underneath the windscreen as well, so that air-conditioned air can chuff around the cabin quite happily. Ahead of the gear shifter we have got an awesome, and I mean truly awesome, JVC R33 radio cassette. It's a digital thing. So if this is from 1979 and original, this is the most expensive cutting-edge head unit that was probably available on the market. It is absolutely stunning. Can we get the display up, I wonder? There we go. Orange backlighting and LCD. This is genuinely beautiful. But moving back from that stunning JVC, we have got the gear shift. It's mounted on more Alcantara. There's more of the Formica wood around front and behind that. This is the gear shifter for the automatic gearbox, which does have a curious blue glow to your gear selector. Over to the right hand side we have got our driver's area, our binnacle, which has got a total of 6 dials. We've got a rev counter going all the way to 7,000 RPM with no discernible red line. That Lotus engine does spin quite freely. Top speed showing 140 miles an hour. And we've got our other sub-dials and little warning lights to the left and right. Notably, we've got separate left and right indicator telltales, which is pretty cool. While we're here, on that same stalk, we've got the wipers on the left, and we've got indicators and horn here on the right. Horn test. This so wants to be an Italian car parp. That's hilarious. And moving back from that, we have got the most 1970s steering wheel I think I've ever seen. The outside is pretty normal. It's just a nice soft touch, hard leather, black rim. But this center section here, it's just 1970s sci-fi gold. And that Alcantara does continue all around the steering column as well, and hidden down here in the corner, like they're trying to hide the fact they've had to put something as mundane as this in the car. The choke is lurking behind there. Now headroom, it has to be said, is not stunning. It's a little bit tight, and these sun visors do actually get pretty close to the front of your face, and behind your head you'll notice, because we've got the glass fibre GRP type shell, we've got these rollover hoops moulded into the frame of the car, which do actually come down a little way into the headlining of the car. And of course we have that second bulkhead at the back with that rear window. Now climbing into the back of the car, we have got the most 1970s bucket seats you've ever seen. We have got the ashtray out of a Rover P6 down here. There is not a great deal of legroom, it has to be said. I mean, this is a 2+2 pretty much in name only. People joke about amputees and children riding in the back of these cars, but seriously, that is kind of silly. It looks great, but it's effectively useless. Very much like a Jaguar XKS, which is kind of the market they were hunting for with this.
Right. Let us fire up the Lotus. It fires up really easily, and it's idling very smoothly indeed, but it's kind of curious, it doesn't have that supercar growl just at idle. Air conditioning on, get that blowing, and head out on the road. Go put it into drive, and off we go. Electric window up. Because posh. This car does have a few surprises. In terms of its construction and development. It was designed in-house by a guy called Oliver Winterbottom, and he gave it features like those incredible pop-up headlights, which are actually vacuum operated, believe it or not, rather than electric. He did the outside, Ital designed in the inside, but Colin Chapman did the chassis and suspension. Broadly based on the Elan and the Europa. It's a backbone chassis, much like the DeLorean, and this and the Eclat were the last road cars that Colin Chapman had direct input or involvement in when it came to development, so it's quite significant in that point of view. And typically Colin Chapman, as well as being light, it's got all independent wheel sprung suspension, and so the thing just floats and flows down the country lane. Whatever speed you're doing, it's involving and it's enjoyable. It is incredibly low and sleek and sharp edged, and that gives it an astonishing drag coefficient of just 0.30 and a 0 to 60 of 8.1 seconds, although it does only weigh 1,043 kilos. Now this car has got the automatic option, which is available from 1976. It's not what I would go for, but it does make it a very easy car to live with, and that's pretty why this car has survived. It typically was the one lady owner used car when it was sold after about 30 or 40 years in the first ownership, and she bought it because she wanted a fast, exciting, easy to live with car. She took it shopping. She literally only went shopping in it once a week. You couldn't write more of a cliche. But if you didn't have this, there were two other gearbox options. Initially there was a 4-speed taken from Ford, it was basically the Cortina gearbox, and then there was the 5-speed, which was a maxi gearbox internals put into a bespoke gearbox casing or shell. And this does feel like 1970s power steering because it is quite light. It's quite good feedback as well, and you can feel the hydraulic nature of it. It's very easy to drive, as we said, and despite the low roofline and the slightly odd rear windows, you get great visibility out of it, much better than I was expecting. Sometimes you get into these 70s supercar type things, and it's like sitting in a letterbox, and it's a little bit daunting because you don't know what you're going to crash into, because you won't find out until after you've hit it. But this is easy. This is lovely, in fact. You can see why the lady was so keen to drive it and wanted to have this as her everyday car. Better this than a Metro. Now, under the skin, being a Chapman car, of course, it handles and rides impeccably. As well as being quite light, there's a few surprises in terms of where bits and pieces came from. It's got a number of suspension bushes that were liberated from a Ford Escort, for example. But the Escort is the least surprising donor because it's got front suspension uprights from a Triumph Herald. This car's got trunnions. You have to grease the trunnions on your Lotus. How mad is that? But anyway, trunnions aside, this is a terrific driver's car. You sit low down, the legs straight out in the proper sports car driving position. The steering is relatively few turns lock to lock, so you keep your hands straight in front of you as you go through these sharp little bends in the countryside. You can imagine on days like these playing in the background because it feels kind of Lamborghini-like in a way. It feels reminiscent of a Lamborghini Espada, but for a much, much more affordable price. And despite the automatic, this thing does just absolutely glide, and perhaps in today's market, with a generation of, dare I say it, lazier driver, the automatic may actually become a selling point for this thing in the future. It's weird though, driving basically a supercar with that engine note. It's not an unpleasant engine note by any means. It's just not the noise you expect. But what you have to be aware of with this car at all times is that it is 100% a survivor. It's never had paintwork or bodywork or anything. So you might have noticed we've got fewer camera angles on the GoPros than usual. That's because I'm only sticking on the glass today. Normally I've got on the bodywork and all over the place. Not this time, because I don't want to risk marking this incredible original 44-year-old paint. Now Lotus's ambition for this car was to set them as a player in the luxury supercar market, and to a certain extent that did work because the Lotus Esprit Turbo came out shortly afterwards, and that was a bona fide supercar. James Bond used one after all. What's the quality up there? Well, it certainly wasn't far off because things like Lamborghinis and Ferraris in the 70s, whispering, well put together that well, really. And this one, as you can see, is pretty much immaculate and pretty much perfect. And although I'm not going a million miles an hour, I am having a great time barreling down this country layout. honestly, they call the Porsche 911 the everyday supercar, but really, when it comes to 1970s supercars, you'd be hard pushed to beat this. The power steering is incredibly light, the brakes are incredibly strong. It's great, it's really cool. Electric windows, aircon, you're basically ticking all the boxes for a good night in. It did get revamped as the Lotus Type 83 in 1980, and when that happened, it got a few revisions, well, quite significant actually. The chassis became galvanised because the only thing that can rot on this car is the chassis. We'll never know it until too late. This one, I'm assured, is pristine, like everything else on the car. And the 2-litre engine became a 2.2 for certainly a bit more power. If you've enjoyed this drive out in this absolutely stunning Lotus Elite, then please do hit like and subscribe. Join us again next time driving something completely different.